Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Shabbat Shalom. That was something that will probably appear a little bit later on. You are required to grab your timbrel and dance along as you sing that. Of course, that's Miriam's song by Debbie Friedman, and it's always easy to remember the time of year that we honor her because she passed 10 years ago on Tu B'Shvat, and so it's the 10th anniversary of her passing, and she leaves a profound legacy. It's for those of us who are in the Reform and progressive clergy business, there is a secret smile that we have, and I say this with profound respect. One of the Havdalah with Rabbi Kleinman that I saw, the melody that the Kleinman family used for Havdalah was the Debbie Friedman melody, and that's amazing. And of course, there are Orthodox families all over the world who use that particular melody, which is the quintessential Havdalah Nigun, written by an American lesbian reform songwriter. And you know what? There are some times that it's just beautiful to watch how we leave our places of slavery, enter into the wilderness, and become changed, and then finally earn the right to enter into our promised lands. And I'm not the fan of everything that Debbie Friedman wrote, but she wrote with joy. She changed billions of people's lives. Okay, not billions. She changed so many lives of Jews in her music and her teaching ability and her pastoral ability to just be present in all of her teaching activities. And we're going to do a lot of Debbie Friedman today. To some tunes you probably didn't realize were Debbie Friedman. We're going to do a lot of Debbie Friedman today to honor her legacy. And I'm proud to do that. I'm proud to be in a Reformed community where we have such amazing creative people as part of our legacy. We begin our service today on page 161, recognizing the importance of creating sacred space. To look at it differently, the Debbie Friedmans of the world can never come into being without the proper spaces either created for them or them having the power to create that sacred space themselves. As the old saying goes, if the door isn't open for you, sometimes you have to kick it open. And I think that there are a lot of doors that she made sure were open to her. And it's one of the reasons that we have so many viable Reformed synagogues across the world. Page 161, Sacred Space. Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael ma tovu ohalayich leya mishkenotayich Alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel. Page 162. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatsa et ha'adam b'chokhmah uvoro nekavim nekavim chalulim chalulim galui ve'yadui lifnei chisei chavodecha she'im yipatech echad mehem o yisatem echad mehem אי-אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה אדוני, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. Debbie Friedman's melody for having us recognize that we don't believe in original sin in this tradition, that we don't believe that we are filthy and need to be made pure, that we start off with the pure stuff of the universe, and that that's worthy of celebrating in prayer every single day of our lives. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata Habi, Tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata Habi, Tehorahi. Atavarata, Atayatzata, Atanafachta bi. Ve'ata Mishamra b'kibi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. Blessed are you, eternal, giving new life to our bodies every day. Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir neshamot lametim. 164. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin matzadek gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozei Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layaf koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir shena me'enai utnuma me'afapai. 166. Le'olam yehei adam yirei shemayim b'setek v'galui u'modeh al ha'emet v'dover emet bilvavo. We should always be in awe of God in private as well as in public. Speak the truth aloud and mean it in our hearts. We turn to page 171. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Vaya Adonai lemelech kol haaretz, Vayom hahu Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Hoshian Adonai Eloheinu leodot l'shem kodshecha lihishtabeach b'telatecha. Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael min haolam ve'ad haolam. Ve'amar kol ha'am amen hallelujah. Kol ha'neshama tehalleluya. Hallelujah. Kol ha'neshama Hallelujah, hallelujah. Page 172. A reminder that prayer is supposed to lift us up. So we sing a melody that is constantly rising. Baruch Shema Vehaya Ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Shema Vehaya Ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Omer Ve'oseh Baruch Gozer Umkayeh Baruch Oseh V'Reishit Baruch Meracheh Al Haaretz Baruch Shema Ve'aya Ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Shema Ve'aya Ha'olam Baruch Hu. Page 174. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hamelech hagadol ve'hakadosh Av Harachaman, Mehulal B'fiyamo, Meshubach Umfo'ar, B'lshon Kol Chasidav Va'avadav, Uvshirei David Avdecha, Nehalelcha Adonai Eloheinu, B'shvachot u'vizmirot, Nehodecha, Negadelecha, Nefa'ercha, V'namlichecha v'nazkir shemecha Malkeinu Eloheinu. Yachidche ha'olamim, Meshubach Umfo'ar Shmo Ade Ad. Baruch atah Adonai, Melech Mehulal B'tishbachot. Blessed are you, eternal, the sovereign, praised in all worship. Page 176. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodod la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer L'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodod la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Le'agid b'boker chazdecha, ve'en Emunatecha baliלות, alei asor v'alei navel, alei higayon bechinot. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simchtani Adonai b'fo'olecha, b'ma'aseh yadecha aranei. Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai, me'od amku machshevotecha. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ish ba lo yedin sinai, lo yevin etzod, mifrakashim kmo esev yetzitzu kopo le'aven, lishamnam adeyad. Me'atam arum le'olam Adonai, ki ner v'chanai ki hinei Oivech yovedu yitpadu kopole aven. Vetam kenem kani beloti b'shemen re'anan. Vetabedene b'shurai mekamim alai mishmeraim tishamnam oznai. Tzadik katama yifrach ke'erez balvanon yisgei shetulin bevet Adonai mechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvon b'seva deshenim vera'ananim yiyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo avlatabo. Page 180. One of the things that Debbie Friedman did for us was help us praise the Eternal in many different ways with many different instruments. She brought music to so many shuls and melodies that just do not leave your brain when they're there. We have to praise the Eternal with everything we can get our hands on. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah el bekocho, hallelujah bekia uzo, hallelujah bigvurota, hallelujah Kerov gulo. Hallelujah, 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 b'tzit Take a shofar, hallelujah, beneva vechino, hallelujah, betovu machor, hallelujah, meminim ve'yogam, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tzitz le'shama, hallelujah, b'tzitz le'truma, kol hanshema tehalelya, kol hanshema tehalelya. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Page 199, Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen. ברוך אדוני אלוהים, אלוהי ישראל, עושה נפלאות לבדו, וברוך שם כבודו לעולם, וימלא כבודו את כל הארץ. אמן ואמן. נשמת כל חי, תברך את שמך, אדוני אלוהינו, ורוח כל בשר תבער ותרומם, זכרך מלכנו תמיד, מן העולם ועד העולם, אתה אל, אתה אל. Middle of page 203. שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני, לשרים נאווה תהילה, בפי ישרים תתרומם, ודברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתעלה. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, לעולם ועד שיר ושפחה, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, לשמך הגדול והקדוש, ומעולם ועד עולם אתה אל. ברוך אתה אדוני בורא כל הנשמות, ריבון כל המעשים, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלכי העולמים. Page 206, we step into our formal prayer. We are gathered together, but we look to the right, to the left, as we enter into the city of the eternal. And one person bows to call out and say, we're ready to do this. And everyone joins in and says, we are indeed. Bless the living God, whom we are called to bless. Blessed is the living God, whom we are called to bless forever and ever. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvrei choshech, oseh shalom uvrei et hakol. Blessed are you, our living God, sovereign of the universe, who forms light yet creates darkness, who makes peace yet creates all. All things proclaim you, all things honor you, and all say none is holy like God. The one who gives light to all the world and those who live in it, renews in goodness the work of creation day by day. God, how great are your works. You made them all in wisdom. The earth is full of your creatures. You are the only sovereign exalted from the beginning of time, who has been worshipped, praised, and glorified since the days of old. 209. Elohei olam berachamecha, harabim rachem aleinu. Adonu zenu tzur miskabenu magen yishenu, miskav ba'adenu. Or chadash, at Zion ta'ir, or chadash, at Zion ta'ir. Or chadash, at Zion ta'ir, or chadash, at Zion ta'ir. Venizke chulanu, mehera le'oro. Venizke chulanu, mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'ma'oro. Ahava rabba ahavtanu, Adonai Eloheinu, chemla gedola v'tera, chamalta aleinu. Avinu makenu, ba'avur shemcha hagadol, uva'avur avoteinu, shebatechu vach. ותלמדמכו כחיים, לעשות רצונך בלבב שלם, כן תכוננו. הערננו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבנו לאהבה וליראת שמך, למען לא נבוש ולא ניכלם. למען לא נבוש ולא ניכלם, כי אל פועל שבועות אתה, ובאנו ובחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו מלכנו, לשמך הגדול ואהבה, להודות לך ולייחדך ולאהבה את שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Le'olam Va'ed. And you shall love the eternal your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. These words that I command you today shall be upon your heart, shall be upon your heart. Repeat them to your children and talk about them when you sit in your home and when you walk in the street and when you lie down and when you rise up. Secure them as a sign upon your hand, and let them be as reminders before your eyes. Write them on the doorposts of your home, and at your gates, and at your gates, and at your gates. Continue silently on 132. We continue silently on the next page, on 214. Vayam Shmot Shmot. כי מהשמיים על הארץ למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת ויציב וקיים ומקובל, וטוב הדבר הזה עלינו לעולם ועד. אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו, צור יעקב מגן אישנו, לדור ודור הוא קיים, ומלכותו ואמונתו ליד קיימת. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, פודנו אצלנו מעולם הוא שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. 2:18, it is you who always helped our ancestors in every generation. You were the shield and the savior for them and their children after them. Happy indeed are those who hear your commands and set the teaching and your word upon their hearts. It is true that you are the first and that you are the last, and besides you, we have no sovereign who rescues and saves us from Egypt. You delivered us, eternal our God, and redeemed us from the camp of slavery. Moses and Miriam And all the children of Israel responded to you in song and great joy, some of them grabbing timbrels and dancing. All of them sang. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef elei, nora tehilot, osef elei. שיר חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמחה שפתיים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלי, נורא תהילות אוסף אלי. יא נאי 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 נאי, יא נאי 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 נאי, נאי 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 נאי, יא נאי 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 נאי. Yisrael, Kuma Bezrat Yisrael, Kuma Bezrat Yisrael, Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Ata Adonai, Gav Yisrael. Please rise for our Amidah on page 222. Adonai, Sefetai Tiftach, Ufi Yagit Tehilatecha. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu, V'le'avatenu, V'le'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagdol, Hagibor, Ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Konek HaKol, V'zocher Chazrei Avot Ve'imahot, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר משיח מגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם פוקד שרה אתה גיבור ללמרני מחי מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב רוח מוריד הגשם מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים רופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מחמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש קדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש 227 ישמח משה במתנת חלקו כי אבן נאמן קראת לו כליל תפארת ראשו נתת בעומדו לפניך על הר סיני ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת וכן כתוב בתורתך ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ינאי נאי ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי
Shabbat vayinafash, uvayom hashvi'i, Shabbat vayinafash. Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Ritzena v'imnuchatenu, Kahadshenu v'mitzvotecha, Simcha elkenu v'toratecha, Sahabeinu mituvecha, Samach nafshenu v'shuatecha, V'taher libeinu le'avdecha be'emet, V'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu, Be'avah uveratzon, Shabbat kodshecha, V'yanuchu v'kol Yisrael, Mekadshe shemecha, Baruch ata Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Our living God, be pleased with your people Israel, and listen to their prayers. In your great mercy, delight in us, so that your presence may rest upon Zion. 231. V'tachazena enenu b'shuvecha l'tzion berachamim, Baruch ata Adonai, hamachzeh shchinato l'tzion. Modim anachnu lach, shetachvod aleinu v'lehei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzureinu tzur chayenu, u'magen yishenu atahu, l'dor v'dor nadei lechan seper tilatecha, al chayenu ha'misrim be'edecha, ve'al nishmotenu ha'pagdot lach, ve'al nesecha shebechol yom imanu, ve'al nefotecha, v'tovatecha shebechol eit erev v'voko v'tzohorayim, ha'tov ki lo chalu rachamecha, hamlechem ki lo tamu chazdecha, ki me'olam kavinu lach. ועל כולם יתברך ותורמם ויתנשא תמיד שמך מלכנו לעולם ועד וכל החיים ידעו סלע ויהללו ויברכו את שמך הגדול באמת הארץ תנו סלע ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך לך נאה להודות. Grant us peace, goodness, and blessing, life, grace, and kindness, justice, and mercy. Source of our life, bless us all together with the light of your presence, for in the light of your presence you give us, our living God, law and life, love and kindness, justice and mercy, blessing and peace. And in your eyes it is good to bless your people, Israel, with the strength to make peace. Blessed are you, God, blessing your people, Israel, with peace. Baruch atah Adonai hamfarech b'mo Yisrael b'shalom. We take a few moments now to step into places of private reflection.
And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing the song of one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced, they danced the whole night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one that sang our history. With every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. The woman touched her spirit, she dances toward the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced, they danced the whole night long. Miriam stood upon the shores and gazed across the sea. The wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass for freedom and then march to the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing to one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced, they danced the whole night long. prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We've just lived through a miracle, we're gonna dance all night. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing the song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced, they danced the whole night long. Miriam and the women danced, they danced the whole night long. Miriam and the women danced, they danced the whole night long. If you joined a little bit late, it is the 10th Yortzeit of the great Debbie Friedman. So there's been a lot of attempt to honor her memory. Her memory is for so many a blessing, but of course we make memories a blessing through our own activities, making sure that the people who have made such a difference to us in our lives are indeed never forgotten. So I'm going to try over the course of the last few months that I'm here, focus on breaking down symbols in the Torah. And the reason I want to do this is, again, trying to help us break out of looking at these stories literally and start to see that they are truly universal in their scope, that they speak to us as profoundly today as they always have, that every generation can reinterpret. But the symbols, the archetypes that we see in every part of Torah are universal. And we've just got one of the most chock full of symbols, Parshiot Bishalach, which includes the Song of the Sea, which includes the first battle with Amalek, which includes the first time manna falls in the desert, and what I want to talk about today, the striking of the rock to get water at Meribah. And the symbols have to be taken, everything that happens in the book of Exodus and Numbers really has to be taken in the larger context of the greater symbol. And the greater symbol is Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt. Now, again, the story, the pshat of the story, the clear of the story is the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, having to go down to Egypt to save their lives at a time of drought, at a time of famine, and then after generations and generations, they become enslaved. They leave their slavery. It takes a lot for them to leave their slavery, and then they end up, because of the upcoming sin with the golden calf, being forced to stay within the desert for 40 years before they are finally, upon the death of Moshe Rabbeinu, able to enter the Promised Land. So again, that's the pshat of our story, but the symbols are pretty amazing in and of themselves, because slavery, coming out of Egypt, of course, we've all hopefully sung the song about the Gesher Tsar Me'od, right? So, Kol Olam Kulo Gesher Tsar Me'od. The whole wide world is a very tsar, narrow bridge, tsar. So, Mitzrayim from tsarim, from narrow places. So, we escape from slavery in narrow places. We escape from being closed in. And slavery is maybe a hard word for us to use, but anyone who has experienced addiction has been or is enslaved to that. Everyone who is in a relationship that they can't get out of is enslaved in a sort of way. And of course, we do still have modern slavery in many profound sorts of ways, whether it's being underpaid, whether it's being falsely paid, whether it's being paid unethically. All those sorts of things are at least analogs to slavery. So it's an analogy that's easy throughout history to find which people in a society are taken advantage of, or what do we personally enslave ourselves to. So the beginning of the story is recognizing that we are enslaved. And of course, once we are bound to something that we can't control, and again, addiction I think is by far the best analogy here, not only is it not easy to get out of, oftentimes it's impossible. And it's certainly not linear. right? The illusion is, okay, one day I wake up and I can stop this whatever it is, behavior or substance or relationship or whatever the case may be. By the way, everyone's addicted to something. It's just that some are more socially acceptable than others. I come from a country where the most socially acceptable addiction is workaholism. It's killed people over and over again, but it's socially acceptable. How many people have I worked with in my life in the States who used to brag that they haven't had a vacation in 20 years, and that was seen as a cool thing? That's addiction, okay? So that's just a socially acceptable one. Yay, go overwork so that we can have a house that falls down in the first wind that blows by. Let me tell you how I really feel about this. Anyway, it's not linear because as soon as we make the decision, oh my goodness, well, first of all, how do we even make the decision that we are enslaved, right? How can someone who is working 90 hours a week and is proud of it and bragging that they go to work with 103 temperature and the flu? I really hope COVID has helped us get over that for our entire existence, the thinking that that's somehow a cool or good thing to do. First of all, how do you even recognize that you're enslaved? If we're proud of it or if we need it, whatever it might be, the dirty secret of addiction is some addiction's a lot of fun until it's not fun anymore, right? Until we have no control over our lives. So what's going to cause us to get out of that situation? And the symbol that we use in the Torah is the plagues, and Pharaoh being the force that keeps us locked into it, and each of the plagues being the breaking down of that pharaonic power, that power of the addiction over us. And of course, one of the great symbols that's used over and over again is the staff, right? The staff is the symbol of the power, and the staff is an aggressive sort of instrument and sort of symbol. And we see that staff striking a rock. The staff is associated with the element of fire within within alchemical traditions and tarot traditions and symbolic archetypal traditions. And so the symbol of the staff is being the active energy that can slowly break down that which has dominion over us, that keeps us enslaved. And so that getting out of slavery in and of itself is seen as incredibly difficult. And then once we do, the illusion is my life is now perfect. I will never want to go back to that slavery. But look at what our Exodus story shows us. First of all, it's not just direct from leave slavery, now happy promised land, land of milk and honey. We've got 40 years in the wilderness, and 40 is a typological number, right? It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The spies went out into Canaan and looked for 40 days. So whenever the term 40 comes up, it means a very long time. So we went from slavery into very long time in the waste, in the wilderness, in the dryness, in the place where we don't have bounty. Why? Because as soon as we get out of our addiction, we're not ready to live a full life. We still have to rediscover who we are, and we have to stop wanting whatever it is that we left. Not the easiest thing in the world. Well, what do we see in our story today? What begins this incident with the rock at Meribah is we just escaped slavery. And we say, oh, and I say we because this is us. This is what we do. Oh, Moses, would that we were back in Egypt. You brought us out of slavery just so that we could die of thirst. There we have it. And Moses says, listen, the presence of God is right here in our tradition. We could see the fire and the cloud. The presence of, we just got through the parted sea, the great miracle, and already you're grumbling. We look at a story and say, oh my goodness, had I experienced such a miracle? Is that really it? When we're coming out of addiction, do you think that we have any ability to actually appreciate the beauty of nature around us? Miracle. The brilliance of children? Miracle. The daily miracle of waking up, opening our eyes, having food, having clothing? Do you think that we're in a state of, oh, I'm so grateful for everything when we've just come out of the narrow places? The story has such profound truth. What we do is, as soon as the first pain comes, and there's always pain when we leave something that we depended on. When the first pain comes, we say, I want to crawl back in that gutter that I have been so miserably sleeping in, because at least there I know what's going on. So then we are presented with three more symbols. The staff comes back. We've got a rock, and then we've got after the staff strikes the rock, water comes out. Well, water's one of the most perfectly beautiful universal symbols. In our tradition, whenever water appears, usually at a well, it is the time that we see a dialogue beginning, oftentimes a relationship, the famous well set or the well series. And we see over and over again a relationship beginning at the well, probably the most beautiful being the relationship between Yaakov and Rachel. But of course, we've got the dramatic well scene where Moses meets his wife Zipporah as she is being attacked by brigands, and he fights them off. And of course, we've got the strange well scene where Isaac meets Rebekah, except for Isaac's not there. It's actually a servant of Abraham who does that meeting. All of these things are clues to what are going to happen with those people in our tradition. And in this case, it's not a well for two people to meet. It is the meeting of the presence of God developing a relationship with us. So of course, water has to appear. How does this work in our larger symbol that we're working with? Well, after we have left our slavery, we have to reestablish a relationship with that which will bring us life, because the slavery is the path to death, as any addiction ultimately is a path to death, whether death of the body, of the spirit, of the soul, of relationships, of self-respect. And so we have to have our well seen. But we've got the multitude spread out in front of us, so the well scene's a little bit more dramatic. And the well scene, the water comes out from a rock. Oh, here's where it gets really beautiful. The staff that is used to strike the rock is very explicitly in the text the exact same staff that is used to strike the Nile. It's not explicit, but most likely the exact same one that was turned into a serpent in the first meeting with Pharaoh and Pharaoh's magicians. Think of this for a second. The staff is the symbol of power, of breaking down, that got us out of slavery in the first place, or at least made us realize that we needed to. And now in the waist, we're carrying that thing that got us to think, to begin to become aware of the situation we're in. And we're bringing that and transporting it into this terrifying time where we don't know what happens next, and we're beginning to long for our misery. And right at that moment, that same symbol causes the water to appear. The tangible relationship between us and the eternal at this moment. Our dialogue with that which is greater than us. In other words, think of how strong of a message we need to hear for us to become aware of the things that are holding us back. It's one of the reasons that we have religion. We can mock it all we want. I've seen more eye rolls in my life when people find out that I consider myself religious. Obviously not in any traditional sort of way, but a rabbi, I guess by definition, is kind of religious. Religious traditions are the things that help us to become aware at their most profound sorts of ways. But how often have we had a realization? How often have we had that moment where we've been embraced by our community, our religious tradition? And so we use that and we talk about how glorious that is. And then the second we're fine, we don't need it anymore. I don't need to come to shul anymore. That's why Judaism is constantly wailing and gnashing its teeth. Where are people? Because we need a synagogue when we're in pain. We need a synagogue when we need education. We need a synagogue for life cycle events. And as soon as that change of life is over, what do I need of that anymore? But that's exactly the opposite of this. The thing that helps us in that time of greatest need is what we transport into the time of confusion. Which means that what gets us through that middle time where we have some freedom, but we're longing for something else, is exactly what got us out of the hard thing to begin with. The same community, the same rituals, the same connection with something greater than us. And finally, it's not just the water representing relationship, the rock representing how hard it is to get to that dialogue, right? We just passed through Tu B'Shavat where we have this lowest level of existence, the Ha'olam Ha'asiyah, the world of doing. That's who we all are. We are in the process of doing instead of being, and at that level we eat nuts. Why? Because the hard covering is protecting the beautiful stuff within.
We have to smash that down in order to begin elevating ourselves. The symbols are amazing, but what's really going on is trying to figure out how it is that we create a place and time where we can meet with that part of us that needs that nourishment to get us through that transition time. And to close out this symbol, this meditation, this exploration on the symbol of striking the rock, I found a text explaining this verse by the Or HaChaim. The Or HaChaim was a 1700s, 18th century Moroccan Kabbalist and Talmudist, died in Eretz Israel, I think 1731 or something like that. But he focuses on the verse, Hineni omed lefenecha. So God is speaking to Moses in this drama and says, I will be standing there before you. Again, the relationship, and that's when the water comes out. The word lefenecha, according to the Or HaChaim, refers to the place Moses was standing on when God spoke to him. Whereas the word sham, so there, I'll be with you there, immediately afterwards refers to the rock. God emphasized that the whole earth is filled with God's glory on a permanent basis, and that God does not have to change location. So this is the general idea of spirituality that, you don't need a synagogue to worship, per se. You don't need anything. You just need to be in that place at that time and make the decision to worship. But look at what happens to that. However, there are sites where God's presence is more manifest than others. Alternatively, the degree in which God manifests God's self in certain locations is determined by the preparation that location has undergone in order for the site to be fit for God to reveal God's self. I want to repeat that last sentence. Alternatively, the degree in which God manifests God's self in certain locations is determined by the preparation that location has undergone in order for a site to be fit for God to reveal God's self. The last part of the metaphor that we take out is maybe the hardest. And that's that in the process of moving from slavery to freedom, there are no givens. It takes constant work. It takes nurturing. It takes awareness. And if we want to have our structures, our organizations, and our places be places where we can be in the times that we need to recognize what's holding us down, if we want to be in those places at times that we know we need the nourishment as we are leaving those narrow places, and indeed if we want to be in those places and call them the promised land, they don't just get to be there by default. They actually have to be prepared. They have to be manifested. So the final question, as all of us at some point, including possibly right now, have gone through or are in a narrow place. All of us have gone through or are in a time of transition. All of us have gone through stepping over a threshold to a promise. If we want to be the holy community that can get out of our narrow places, or the holy community who nourishes those who are coming out of them, it doesn't just happen because we have a building, a name, a community, because we call ourselves something, because we wear specific clothing. All these things help. It's why we actually wear a tallis, to actually elevate the moment and be conscious that this moment is not every moment before it, that this is a different moment, something special and elevating is happening. But the question is, are we allowing our places, our gatherings, to be places where God can manifest God's self in our journey from our narrow places to places where we can be nourished? It's a beautiful image. The striking of the rock contains within it every element of daily pain and how we actually move from that to something of profound healing. So over the next few months, I invite you to continue exploring symbols like this. Obviously, it's less of a sermon and more of a meditation. We're going to play around with this for a little while. We've got some great symbols like golden calves coming up. And with that one, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. We are moving towards the end of the service. I realize that it is really early.
but I'm having a weird vision thing right now, and I'm having a hard time seeing and focusing, and so I absolutely recommend at this point that you just pause the playback of the service, and that you, right below the part of the service where you're looking at me, you've got the links to the Torah readings. The Torah reading starts with manna, and then in chapter 17, which is what I was talking about last night, and today we have the stories of the battle with Amalek and the striking of the rock. And then the passage from the book of Judges today is just, it's a story of Gideon, which those of you who are in my Judges deep dive will just love re-exploring that. So I invite you to just pause right now and read through both of those. Let's do a blessing together as we prepare for this place of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, eternal and our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made us elevated through our sacred obligations and gives us the obligation to immerse ourselves in Torah. Go ahead and pause the playback now. Spend some time reading Torah. Welcome back. We enter into prayers of the community, and we think of those who are struggling with illness. We think of those who in our community are we think of those in our community who have been struggling for a very long time, including the new illnesses that have come up recently. And of course, the numbers for COVID, thank goodness, are going down in our country. At the same time, it's still a serious situation, and we continue losing people every day. As I saw Rabbi Hugenholtz yesterday post that her rabbi who was responsible for her working through her conversion process, that he passed from COVID. And so this is something that we just want to keep everyone who is experiencing illness in our hearts and in our minds as we again welcome Debbie Friedman to offer us words of blessing. Special blessings today for Dossie Glathrin, Richard Kaplan, Nick and Sheila Bushell, Steffi Frenzel, April Moses and Jim Moses, and Bill Myers and Ann Abbey, Jerry Levy, Dan Suckle, Joy Brading and Pat Bronsberg and Barbara Salas. Special blessings of healing to every one of them.
Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We offer a prayer for our government. We are moving quickly in our government with getting a lot of jabs out there. I know that many in our community have already done so. And I encourage you, as you get your jab, to say a shechianu, to say a blessing, to say the prayer for our bodies that we find in the beginning of the service, but to mark this moment, because as more of us become inoculated, the more of us will be able to help society to begin functioning once again. The little bit of trivia, the word vaccination comes from the Latin for cow, And the reason it's there is because some of the first common vaccines were smallpox vaccines that were used by taking infected cows with the bovine version of that and then giving that to human, hence the word vaccination, which that's my little bit of trivia for the day. You're all very welcome for that. But with a great deal of intentionality, we say, may God, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and may God give wisdom to the government of this country, to all who lead it, and to all who have responsibility for its safety and welfare. May God give us all the strength to do our duty and the love to do it well, so that justice and kindness may dwell in our land. May God's peace be in our hearts, so that every community of our nation may meet in understanding and respect, united by love and goodness, and keeping far from violence and strife. Together may we work for peace and justice among all nations, and may we and our children live in peace. So may this kingdom find its honor and greatness in the work of redemption and the building of God's realm here on earth. Such may be the divine will, and let us all say, Amen. A blessing and a prayer for the state of Israel. Eloheinu v'elahei kol hadochot shlachna b'chatcha al medina Israel ve'al kol yoshvecha. Shlachna orcha v'amitatecha lemanhigei ha'am v'hadrichem b'chochma uvit vuna kedei sheyisror shalom b'gvulotecha v'shalva b'vetecha. Ruach ha'chava v'avna hadadit tzrepe kol petza v'chabura. Tikvat ama v'avodat b'necha tagshemna et chazon hanvi'im ki mitzion tetzet tocha u'devar Adonai Yerushalayim. And we all say, Amen. Since I didn't do the Torah reading, I'm not going to finish off with the songs afterwards, but I ask us all to stand for Aleinu. Turn to page 310. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tekru l'etzeh bereshit, asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato, v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu notei shamayim ve'yosed haaretz, u'moshe v'karol b'shamayim mima'al, u'shkinatu zo, begofe meromim. Hu Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efes zulato, kakatuv b'torato, ve'adata hayom, v'ashevota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim mima'al, ve'al haaretz, mitachat einod, v'ne'emar, ve'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, Bayom hahu, Yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. We turn our thoughts now to those that we have lost in recent days, in recent years. We also remember that this week, the 27th of January, was the commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz, which of course causes us to bring to mind not only the nearly 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, but the more than 5 million Roma, Sinti, LGBTQ+, political dissidents, communist, Slavic peoples. So the nearly 12 million people who were murdered for everything that is the worst of humanity and everything that, unfortunately, given the right time, place, situation, we are all capable of joining in with. So a prayer of Yit Gadal V'Yit Kadash, ending in Shalom, is much a prayer for elevation of ourselves, that we can never be the part of the worst of humanity, even though it's far too easy for all of us to slip into that, even in small ways. We, of course, remember all those in our community that we've lost at this time in previous years. We think of those specifically that we've lost in recent days. We think of Peter Clausen, the father of Caroline Israel, Simon Gublar, the father of Robert and Nick, and Emmanuel Pine, the son of Linda Harrison. In our community, we think of Gisela Dyson, the mother of Robert Dyson, Jean Compton, the grandmother of Jade Marlowe, Pearl Berger, the mother of Louis Berger, mourned by the entire Sinai family, Michael Bloom, the grandfather of Hannah Bloom, and Elizabeth Levy, the aunt of Elsha Prince, Cyril Nelson, the father of Bernard Nelson, and James Walsh, the husband of Vanessa Walsh, and of course, Debbie Friedman, mourned by Jews of all streams all around the world. If you are in a state of commemoration or mourning, I invite you to stand first as the rest now rise and join you as we enter into solidarity with those of you who are saying Kaddish at home. We're on page 316.
Yit Gadal.
Say shalom b'roma, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru, amen. May the source of strength grant strength to all who are in mourning, and may we all say, amen. Few announcements. First one is we continue with Gateways class up through April. The next one will be tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. We are going to be reading a daf, a page of Talmud. We spent last time talking about how to decode it, what's actually on a page, and it's a fun and interesting thing to do. So you can still sign up, even though we're way into it. I'm trying to make every class a little bit self-contained. It's impossible to do, but join in. Just go to our calendar on the website and sign up, and you'll be sent the Zoom link. Every 4 p.m. on Fridays, if you were not aware, there is, before the regular service taking place, a kids Kabbalat Shabbat aimed primarily at primary school children. I understand yesterday, the theme was Disney, which one can never have too much Disney Shabbat. Just wait till you hear my Disney Adon Olam that I'll do at some point, right? Adon Olam, Hashem. Right, exactly. Wednesday night, I have, for a long time, had planned with the Council of Christians and Jews in Leeds to do an educational concert. It's listed as saying performing an eclectic mix, some which he composed from traditional Jewish music to traditional jazz. The jazz is coming very backdoor. It's very much a look at Jewish music that's influenced me in some of my compositions. So look on the website and in the newsletter. It's free registration. It's an Eventbrite event. So please join in on Wednesday night. I'd love to hear from you if you attended that. And then on Thursday night, there's the open mic night. Look on our newsletter and the website for that. But apparently we all have to hold Thea to the fact that she is going to be doing Hava Nagila in the style of Biggie Smalls. I think that's what she promised, so there it is. Buy Sidurim if you are still using the online flip book. Stop using the online flip book. Thank goodness it's there. It was meant to be temporary. Get a Sidur in your hands. Everyone needs at least one of our Sidurim at home. And come celebrate a special birthday. I'm not giving more details because it's on the website, because in case that special birthday person is watching, I don't want to give away the farm. Go to the website, read about that. You can all be involved. So let's be involved. And finally, Kaddish and Kiddush at 12:30 today. Passcode for that, 298653. If you've never done Kaddish and Kiddush, join and say Kaddish on Zoom, and then Kiddush and chat and schmooze, have some coffee, see people we haven't seen in a long time, and join us for that. So there we are. We come to the end of the service way earlier, which I'm sure is breaking everyone's hearts. And it's been a very Debbie Friedman day, so let's finish off with her O Say Shalom then. O Say Shalom Bimroma hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. If you are still with me and want to do Kiddush, grab some fruit of the vine. We're on page 454. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'dorotam berit olam. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'dorotam berit olam. Beni uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti le'olam. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashemayim ve'et haaretz. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'dorotam berit olam. U'veyom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'dorotam berit olam. Zachort yom Shabbat lekadsho, sheshet yamim tavod v'sita chol melachtecha, v'yom hashvi'i Shabbat l'Adonai Elohecha, lo taseh chol melacha ata uvinecha, uvitecha avdecha ve'amtecha uvehemtecha, v'gerecha asher b'sharecha, ki sheshet yamim as Adonai et shemayim ve'et haaretz, et hayam ve'kol asher bam, v'yonach bayom hashvi'i, al kein berach Adonai et yom HaShabbat, v'yekadshehu. Baruch atah Savri Chavarai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. Shabbat shalom.